How the pistol killed the cavalry, at least for a little bit. Cavalry has been around for basically as long as warfare has existed, but their effectiveness has waxed and waned, and so have their tactics. Last video, we talked about how the changes the Swedish made to their cavalry charges in the early 18th century made them brutally effective. Large quantities of men, and confusingly, the removal of the pistol as a charging weapon. This seemingly flies in the face of everything history has taught us. Surely as gun technology advances, you should probably stop galloping headstrong at the enemy. But surprisingly, this is not the case. And to see why, we need to go back a little bit. In the Middle Ages, cavalry was a mainstay of the battlefield. Armoured knights in Europe who had been trained basically from birth would use lances to break the infantry, and basically do whatever they pleased. But as firearms technology advanced, tactics such as the pike and shot square, where musketeers were protected by pikemen, provided an almost impenetrable defence, and the armour of the knights meant very little. So a game of catch-up began. The cavalrymen of Europe began to use heavier and better armour, for a short period of lightening the load. In the 16th century, they began to swap out their lances and swords for much shorter lances and wheel-lock pistols. This is where the tactic of the caracole was born. Cavalry facing each other would, allegedly, ride up to as close as touching distance, place their pistols on their enemy's armour, and fire. Against the infantry, the cavalry would form a rank and charge. Instead of breaking and scattering their enemy like in years past, and if we look to the true peak of the European cavalry, the Napoleonic Wars, the future, they would fire pistols, wheel back round, reload, and charge again. Often they would carry multiple pistols, creating a constant and withering loop of fire. But as the 17th and early 18th centuries rolled around, armour that had in earlier years been able to stand up to muskets at surprisingly close ranges could no longer. The caracole turned cavalry into sitting ducks, and conversely, the cavalry was no longer the domain of the rich and powerful. By the age of the Swedish Empire, the charge of sword and lance was reintroduced, and the infantry would face another long period of brutalization at the hands of decimating charges, such as the legendary charge of 11,000 men by the French in 1807 at Eylau, which was practically unprecedented. And here pistols were reserved for after the charge. The real work would be done with swords and lances. This return to the past, as it seems, would last really up until the American Civil War, where cavalry began to once again regress into a more passive and long-range role, with of course some exceptions. And with the death of the charge came the death of the heavy cavalry.